always been into Mad Max as a character. I thought Road Warrior #2 was really impressive. I mean, the way that it just changed completely from the first movie to the second movie, because the first one's kind of post-apocalyptic, but not really. You're just kind of in a group, a town full of crazy people. But the second movie, you really lean into that. And that's the first time we see that world. And then the third film, which I often kind of forget about, I think it's got like Tina Turner in it. It's got a bunch of uh, weird things that felt kind of outlandish, like some of the characters in Fury Road, but it didn't really keep a cohesive narrative for me. So still somewhat enjoyable. Didn't love it, didn't think anything of it. And I saw all of those movies my freshman year of college, I believe, which was right before Fury Road came out, because I'm like, we've got to get prepped here. And then Fury
Yeah.
Road comes out and feels nothing like the other Mad Max films, like at all. I know you recast with Tom Hardy and you're kind of spawning off into a completely different world, but it felt like Miller was out on just he had an idea that he was going to change the game when it came to action. You could tell that there was a plan here. And he said, I want to shoot a lot of this practically. I want to go all in on some of the craziest stunt work you've ever seen. And I want to make Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, I want to make them hate each other. And they did, apparently, behind the scenes. And so, and you imagine shooting in that setting, and even Furiosa, which they shot a little bit in that setting, not all of it, but you imagine how crazy that would make you, because not only are you witnessing some of this stunt work by these amazing stuntmen and women, Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, they did a lot of stunts in that film, but you see that translate. And that's what I was so enamored by with Fury Road. I'm like, this feels real. As crazy as the characters are, as insane as Nicholas Hoult is in that film, it feels as grounded as any post-apocalyptic action movie I've ever seen. And so I was locked in the entire time watching, and I had a couple of friends who were very hesitant, like, it seems a little crazy. I'm like, it is, but you have to embrace the crazy. If you can embrace the crazy, you're going to love it. Sure enough, they loved it. And now, almost 10 years later, it's remembered as one of the greatest action movies of that decade. And so I think it did its job, man. I love it. What about you? Do you love it on that level, like 10 out of 10 masterpiece? Because that's where I'm at.
I think that I probably do, but
Okay.
everything that you just described as far as your relationship to this, I pretty much have the exact opposite experience.
Oh,
So I
right.
have not seen any of the Mel Gibson Mad Max movies. Fury Road
Okay.
was the first one. Okay, so guys, let's relax. Okay, so
Wow.
you're gonna learn this. You're gonna learn that I really appreciate going into certain franchises, certain movies without having the history, because I I don't always, it doesn't make me feel good all the time when people who love these sort of retro franchises, older franchises, they go into
Yes.
how Hollywood's updated them, made them new, and they complain. And I'm not saying that they're wrong and that I don't have empathy for that, but if I can avoid it
Mm-hmm.
by just introducing myself to the modern movie, because the modern movie's like the one I have to live with more. Like, I
Yes.
have to live with Fury Road more than I had to live with Mad Max, because I wasn't even alive when it came out. So I like to embrace that mentality, and that's what I did with Fury Road. I didn't have anybody in my life that was cheerleading Mad Max, and so it was really just like the big movie that I saw that weekend because I was podcasting at the time. So I remember Slash Film. I read a lot of Slash Film back in the day, and they were like cheerleading Fury Road, maybe 2 years before the movie eventually came out. So I was hearing a
Yeah.
lot about it. My theatrical experience with Fury Road was not great. I went to sort of a small rinky dink theater in my hometown. It wasn't a Regal, it wasn't a Cinemark. I didn't have amazing sound, I didn't have a big screen. So the presentation was a little dull. And I walked out of the movie just kind of being like, that was cool. And I did not respond to it with the level of adoration that I have sitting here today for it.
Yeah.
It was something that I had to find appreciation for over time. And so when I talked about it on Film Beef all those years ago, I couldn't help it. My experience was bad, so I just didn't relate to it in the best way, and it might be one of my biggest misfires of all time in terms of just
Ooh.
like, I misfired my take on Nightcrawler, Mad Max Fury Road, like, those
Okay.
takes did not age well, but now Fury Road is look, I hope, it's not reversed here, but it is
Oh,
reversed.
yeah.
So this is my
Yeah.
4K steelbook that I got. It's in pristine condition. So anyway, I got this a few months ago, and when I get 4K steelbooks, I usually just get them and I admire them from my recliner, but I don't always pop them in like day of. Like there's still
Mhm.
steel books that I have on the shelf that have been there for a year that I haven't watched. Fury Road, and I'm wrapping up, I promise.
No, you're
Fury
fine, man.
Road, I received that steel book and popped it in immediately. And but I've seen the movie probably about 5 or 6 times now,
Yeah.
and I am very fond of it, and I do think it's one of the best blockbusters I've ever seen.
Well, that's my thing too, is I don't think I actually started out masterpiece. I definitely started out 9 out of 10,
Mm,
top 10 movie of that year. It was, I believe, in right outside my top 5 or in there. And now it's my number 1 movie of that year. And now it's
yeah.
in my top 50 films of all time. And now it's grown, and it's cool because it's one of those movies that you can watch and I think appreciate. Like, I didn't appreciate all of that meticulous stunt work the first time I watched it, but the more
Mm,
you watch it and the more you see what some of these background characters are doing, and you hear the stories about Theron and Tom Hardy on set, and you see where a lot of their careers have come. I think that's cool when you look at a movie like this. It's like Tom Hardy, yeah, he was the guy back then, but he went on to do so many other things. And you go back to his Mad Max days and you're like, man, I kind of miss this. I kind of miss leading man action star Tom Hardy, because it feels like we're not getting that right now. And I miss Charlize Theron doing this type of role and coming across as such a badass. And I mean, she
yeah.
is such a badass character. And I couldn't help but to the next 5 years of her career just look at her and say, oh, that's Furiosa, because she's just
Hmm.
the most badass character I've ever seen. And then to see what Holt's been able to do ever since that film. I look at Nicholas Holt as Lex Luthor, these pictures of him walking around on the streets and everybody's snapping he's bald right now and everybody's like, oh my god, that's Lex Luthor. And then I look at his
Yeah.
character in this movie and I'm like, that's two different people. That doesn't even look like the same guy.
Yeah.
All right, it's insane, the transformation that he did there. And so I think a reflection on the careers, I think a reflection on George Miller, and knowing that this is where he should live for me. Like, everybody looks
Mm,
at George Miller and they're like, oh, he's this world class filmmaker. And I think he is with certain things, but I've seen other George Miller movies that other people respond to. I didn't. What was the one a couple years ago? What, 3,000 Years of Longing?
of longing, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I skipped that. I that completely left my memory bank. I have to be reminded it exists. I
it was
just
bad.
didn't.
No, it wasn't
Yeah,
even like it falls short of expectations. No, I thought it was a bad movie. And the
I
thing
believe
is,
you.
though, it felt like we were living in that Mad Max world in the movie. Like, it felt like
Oh,
he
really?
was in a, yeah, like that style of filmmaking, that look, that feel to it, except it was just a really bad story with poor characters. So I think this is where he should live. I could
Mm,
do 1,000 more Mad Max spinoffs. And every time he goes back to the well, it keeps delivering, man. And so that's where I'm at with Fury Road. Over the years, it's just grown into this masterclass movie that I've probably seen 10 times now. I just watched it again last
yeah.
week. And it's one of my wife's favorite movies. It's really cool, man. It's really cool.
It's funny you bring up Tom Hardy because I don't have that same relationship to Tom Hardy either. Like
Mm,
I'm not a Tom Hardy guy anymore. I was for a while.
yeah.
Big Lawless fan here. I support Bane, love Bane, but I'm kind of over him. He's kind of been annoying me lately, and with the grunting and the voices, and
Sure.
I don't understand him anymore. And I don't mean like comprehension. I just mean I don't understand what he's doing.
Hmm.
Warrior. I need to mention Warrior. But
Oh,
so I didn't think twice. Like man, are we going to see Mad Max in this film? No, I was excited to see what Furiosa was all about, but that's one of the ways that this movie is similar to Fury Road, and that
Hmm.
the title character is not whose movie it is. So,
No.
Mad Max Fury Road is not Mad Max's movie, it's
No.
Furiosa's.
Yeah.
Furiosa's movie is not Furiosa's. It's Dementis's.
It's Chris
It's him.
Hemsworth's movie.
It is Hemsworth, and that's not to say that like the performances and the Furiosa stuff wasn't fun, but it's the DNA of these films that you'd be mistaken if you think this is just entirely a Furiosa thing that we have going on here. So I don't know. I didn't even have Tom Hardy in the back of my mind. There was one specific shot towards the end of the film that reminded me of the opening shot of Fury Road, and I
Hmm.
was like, "Are they doing that?" But the
Hmm.
timeline didn't match up at all. And anyway, but visually, it was like, "Oh, that reminded me of Hardy," but it wasn't.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, uh, I think that this is like a lot of other blockbusters lately, in that I kind of can't believe that this movie was made. Because I just again, going back to again, this is somebody who you're looking at here, who saw Fury Road first. I saw a freak show of a film first without any like, and I know Beyond Thunderdome, I've seen images and I know it kind of gets freaky there and it's super
Yeah.
metal. It's a very
It's weird.
metal franchise. Um I sat down one night and just put on Mad Max. I was like, "Hey, maybe I'm gonna watch this." And I was not in the right headspace, but I watched about 20 minutes and I couldn't believe that I saw like a world that I recognize with greenery and a cop car.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait, this is Mad Max? I had that experience. I was like, this isn't Mad Max. I was watching the original saying, this isn't what this franchise is. So it was a really weird thing. And I turned it off. I was like, I'm not in the headspace. I can't deal with this. So uh, my main experience has just been these two. And I'm just like, how do studios greenlight these films? Like they're so crazy. Like, can
They're
you
weird,
imagine?
man.
I
Weird.
feel like no studio head could give a note on this because it's just so like singularly George Miller's freak ass vision. It's wild
Hmm.
that so I'm in awe of the fact that it's even made, to be honest, is my main point.
Well, doesn't it? I like what you said there. It genuinely feels like this is George Miller from start to finish, doesn't it? It feels
Mhm.
like no one really came in and messed with this flow. No one really came in and said, "Are you going to need to change that?" And this, especially, I honestly think Furiosa feels more like a singular director's vision than Fury Road, meaning this is a lot of backstory and depth. This is a lot of we saw the world in Fury Road. Furiosa is building that world. Furiosa
Yeah.
is fleshing out those little moments and those little characters you saw in the background of that movie that came out 9 years ago. It's like, oh, that's cool. Who's that guy? What's this dude doing? You get a lot of those answers in Furiosa. And so when you look at the title and you're like, what more do we need to know about Furiosa? We kind of know well, how'd she lose her arm? I guess that's kind of interesting. Well, why is she bald? I guess that's kind of interesting. But what can they do? Well, they do that. But they also give you Immortan Joe and give you some of his kids and give you an explanation of some things that happened after the water wars and some of these locations that we heard about in Fury Road that they never actually went to. We
Yeah.
go there in Furiosa. We see what it looks like. And it's like, especially after watching Fury Road earlier this week, I'm like, that's so cool because I've always wondered what that was supposed to be. I've always wondered,
Mhm.
well, if they went there, how does this work? What's the relationships with the other groups of people? You kind of find some of that out here. And I love how they integrate Hemsworth's crazy character and his crew, his wild group of demented people. They integrate that right into the story, and it flows seamlessly. Yet it still makes all the sense in the world. I'm assuming it will when I rewatch Fury Road for the 11th time. I'm assuming it's going to flow in perfectly, and it's going to make all the sense. And I feel like this was such a fleshed out and strategic screenplay that combined two movies and two worlds so perfectly. And now we may not have every single answer, like who are the crow looking people walking on the sticks in Fury Road. Still don't know that.
Yeah.
But a lot of them we have now. And
Mhm.
I think that's great. And there's going to be things, I'm sure, in this film that when we get another Mad Max movie, he's going to take those elements and do the exact same thing, right? And so what you said earlier was funny. It's like this, uh, that was Furiosa's movie. Well, Furiosa is Chris Hemsworth's movie. I mean,
Mhm.
they're going to do a Hemsworth movie and make somebody else the same character. Like, what are they going to do next? I don't know, man. But I'm excited to find out. And I think that the world building is some of the best I've ever seen.
I think I'd be excited for another Mad Max movie for sure. I don't wanna get morose, but I don't have confidence that George Miller would be directing it, like, just
Ooh, okay,
being realistic. But
sure.
I also think that if they did another one, they'd have to switch gears entirely, and pun unintended. But
That's
I
funny.
just think that, and I think the best way to kinda put a ribbon on this, and I do wanna hear from you on this, it to explain to people who haven't seen it, especially, I think we need to highlight the ways that it is and it isn't like Fury Road to
Hmm.
manage expectations. So I think there was enough in this movie that is too tied to Fury Road. So if we did it again, it would just be more of the same.
Sure.
So there's sequences that still reminded me of Fury Road, and it's like, I can go either way on it because I know I'm watching a Mad Max movie, and this is what
Mhm.
Mad Max movies do. So I'm on board. But again, if we're talking another movie, um, I don't think it's as simple as, oh, we should just get the Hemsworth movie. But not that he wasn't great. So um, I think that this movie is quieter. I think the sound design, especially, is a little less chaotic. Because
Mhm.
when you're watching the scenes in Fury Road, I mean, there's like engines revving and stuff when they're driving across the plane. Like it doesn't even make sense, but they're still playing like RPMs going. It's like that's not even how cars work,
The
but
guitar
it's
guy playing his
nuts.
guitar the whole movie.
Yeah, that's right. And exactly. Yeah. So it's quieter, not that it's not bombastic, it's just quieter than Fury Road, and I understand this movie better. Like, even certain characters that I have a hard time understanding in Fury Road, they're much more clear here.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, but there are similarities too. But I think the DNA of the movie, the way that this moves, saga is definitely the key word here. Where it's Fury Road is just balls out car chasing. So
Yeah, I somebody else said this. I didn't say it, so I'm not gonna take credit. But somebody else said Fury Road's a pure action movie. Furiosa's an adventure film. And I'm like, okay. Together, they're an action adventure, and this adventure has action, and
mhm.
that action has adventure. But that's absolutely what it is. And I like the way that they divided the film into, I want to say five parts,
I
and
think it's 5 or 6 actually. It might
yeah,
be 6,
and
but
everyone feels so distinct, right? They
mhm,
they they mesh together well, but everyone feels so distinct. Now, all of it is surrounding her journey. And so I guess she technically is the title character. But there's always this man by the name of Chris Hemsworth lingering in the background that is the catalyst for her journey. And that's what I found so interesting about it is even when we go off in different directions and we get to spend a lot of time with Immortan Joe and everybody there and you really get an idea as to what the war boys are all about, and that
yeah.
was really cool, right? But he's always in the background and he's always lingering, and at the end of the day, and not to get there yet, but it's on a trajectory that I think we all kind of know what's coming. We just don't know how it's going to happen. And that was really cool. And allowing someone like Hemsworth to just say, I mean, and I'm sure George Miller said, hey, you're a villain. Okay. I want you to go crazy. I want you to be bombastic, but I want you to feel threatening because he was threatening. He's over the top. He's ridiculous. But there were times I'm like, I've never seen that from Hemsworth
Yeah.
ever. It's it might be his best performance. I love him
Uh,
as Thor. I love him as Thor. That's not a dynamic character. He
um,
has been, but I would say I think this is a better performance. I think this is a more clear because Thor has been inconsistent. There are individual
Yeah.
movies where I like his performances. Ragnarok is a fantastic performance, right?
I would say Infinity War is his best performance.
Infinity War is amazing. I think this is better. I really do. I think there's more range on display here. And he did something I didn't think he could do. I knew he could do funny. I knew he could do Thor. I knew he could get serious when he wanted to. And sure, he can show emotion. I've never seen him like this. And so, not my
Yeah.
favorite Hemsworth character. I think this is my favorite Hemsworth performance.
I was gonna save this, but I'll just go on and ask it. Is it Hemsworth's best movie?
Oh, I, I mean, as a former
You a
MC,
black hat guy?
no, God, no. That movie sucked. As a former MCU junkie, I would still say I prefer Infinity War, and I love
What
Ragnarok.
if I said I don't count Infinity War? If I'm like, what's Hemsworth's best movie? What if none of the Marvel movies oh, well, we'll count Thor, but not the ensemble films?
Then yeah, I think it is. Ragnarok's a great movie, but I think the movie that preceded it kind of lessened the impact
Hmm.
just a little bit. I guess preceded Infinity War and whatnot. Um, yeah, I would say it is because from a filmmaking standpoint, from a directing standpoint, from a story standpoint, it's just a better film than Thor Ragnarok. And Hemsworth is really at the forefront of this one. So I would say it's a uh, co with Anya Taylor Joy, but Anya
Mm,
Taylor Joy is only Furiosa for probably half of this movie because you got the little
right.
girl who plays her when she's younger. So yeah, I would consider this a Hemsworth film, and I would say it's the best I've ever seen, unless I'm forgetting something. Am I forgetting something other than Black Hat? I guess
I
Rush is really good,
Yeah, I think
but I
Rush,
like this
Cabin in the
more.
Woods are probably his
Sure.
top 4, Ragnarok, Furiosa. I think that'd be top 4.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny going into this film, I actually didn't feel like Hemsworth needed his stock raised a little bit because I don't know, there's just like this feeling that I have. I've never blamed Hemsworth for Love and Thunder. And I know he's come out recently and kind
No,
of taken the hit and said that,
he was good in
he's
it.
to blame, but I well, it's not even that I think he's good in it. I personally haven't blamed him. So
Sure.
I didn't think he like really needed to come out strong in Furiosa. I was always excited to see him. Always thought he
Hmm.
was going to crush it. He did crush it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't look at him. I've always sort of blamed Taika, but also just Marvel for Love and Thunder. So, um, what else before we break?
Yeah, I just think the distinctions are the distinctions are distinct. They are two different films. The Fury Road is
Hmm.
not really like Furiosa, but they are the same world
Hmm.
and you feel those similarities when you get those specific scenes. But when we're off doing some different things, the build up at the beginning and you actually get to see some of these things in Furiosa's life, it does feel like a different movie. And I like that. I think some people are going to take issue. I need two Fury Roads, three Fury Roads. You don't need that. Let's do something different. And I like what you
Yeah.
said earlier, Ryan. It's Miller can now maybe fast forward 50 years and do something else in this world that doesn't have to have any of the characters, It's like there is so much potential with this nuclear wasteland and all of the things they can do. And so I'm excited to see more, and I'm excited to see him maybe do something a little different from this, which would be cool.
You know what? I'm down for a sequel down the road. You know who needs to play Mad Max? Not Hardy. You know who this
Mm-hmm.
franchise needs?
Oh.
Joel Edgerton. That's that's all I could think about in this movie. I was like, where is Joel Edgerton in the Mad
Hardy's
Max franchise?
brother in The Warrior.
That's
Yeah.
true, but also actually Australian.
That's
so,
true. That's
I mean,
true.
hell, Edgerton should have played Mad Max in Fury Road. Hell, but
Is
that's
that
it.
why Hemsworth was so good in this movie? Because he's just playing up that Australian accent, man. I think that could be
Maybe,
part of it, right?
maybe.
This is back to his roots. That wasn't good. Sorry.